the way I look at AI in healthcare is kind of, three buckets, I would say. One is the
Mhm.
non-clinical aspect of it, which is basically, the general customer experience building, reducing the waiting time in for a test, or making sure the hospital beds are well efficiently utilized. There is resource utilization. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is the clinical decision support systems, right? Where the AI models are actually making decisions on behalf of the doctor, or mostly as a tool to the doctor to make better decisions together, right? So this is where I think it's extremely exciting and extremely beneficial. And the third segment is more enablers, right? Like for example, the wearable devices, where the IoT aspect they call IOMT, Internet of Medical Things, right? So that is the other field which is growing.
Hi, friends, and welcome to this very exciting episode of Leading with Data. Today, I have with me Dr. Geetha Manjunath, who is currently the founder and CEO of Niramai Analytix. She has led the company to develop a breakthrough artificial intelligence based test for detecting early stage breast cancer in a non invasive, radiation free manner. Dr. Geetha is a computer scientist with a PhD from IISc and a management education from Kellogg's School of Management. She has more than 25 years of experience and has led multiple AI projects at Xerox Labs and Hewlett Packard Labs before starting Nera. Her work has received many international and national recognition for her innovation, her entrepreneurial success, including the CSI Gold Medal, the Barrack Winner Award in 2018, and also she is made to Forbes list of top 20 self-made women. She was also awarded with Accenture Vahini Innovator of the Year Award from Economic Times and Woman Entrepreneur of the Year 2020 from Biospectrum. I feel there is so much to learn from Dr. Geetha, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. Dr. Geetha, thanks for taking time out from your schedule and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kunal. It's my pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Great. Uh, so, Dr. Geetha, I would want to start the discussion at how Niramai started. So, you'd spent about 20 years in some
Yeah.
of the leading research labs. So, how was this transition from research lab to being an entrepreneur in health tech space? What's the story behind the start of Niramai?
Yeah. Again, Kunal, thanks a lot for having me on the show. I think I call myself as an accidental entrepreneur, right? Because I never imagined that I'll be running a business, running a startup, running a company. I was a techie, sort of very fond of what we can do with tech, and also try and create impact on the ground on real projects and so on. So I was a principal scientist at Hewlett Packard Labs for a long time. And I had sort of interacted a lot with the international researchers, and they think a little differently, not just about the algorithm, but how does the algorithm impact a particular use
Correct.
case, and how does sort of connect the full end-to-end stack, if you will, right? So that's something
Mhm.
which I learned from my US colleagues at HP. And after that, I went on to lead AI research for Xerox Corporation as a lab director, and that was also great. I had fun and really good time with my great team, developing multiple products and projects for and prototypes for the world, and a few for India as well. But that is the time when I lost one of my cousin sisters to breast cancer. She was 42 years. That kind of shook me. I just learned about cancer. I had not seen anyone die so close to me with this disease. And then I just thought, okay, why don't I do a research in this direction? So started off as a simple project at another project in my lab. Did some initial exploration for about a year or so. And as luck would have it, one more family member also passed away. We are 38 years on her son's birthday. That was the real limit, right? I said, like, why are we losing so many women to breast cancer? And because this was another small project among like 20 odd projects I had, I just thought, I need that focus, and put up a proposal, and quit my job and started Niramai. It's been now 7 years, and because we launched Jan 1st, 2017, really. So it's been an excellent, exciting journey. And I'm happy to share that we are considered to be pioneers of a new method of detecting breast cancer now, which is non-invasive, radiation-free, and yes, powered by AI. Given that AI was my sort of specialization and has been that.
And healthcare is one of those areas where bringing something to production and creating a real life impact like you have done usually takes years or maybe decades, right? Again, depending. So how were these early days for you? So obviously the problem, you were very clear about what you were solving, but then how did you go about building the team? What were the early days like, and then how did you navigate this uncertainty, which is usually associated with early healthcare startups?
Yeah. I guess a lot of support from the ecosystem. I also think that my previous stints at both HP Labs and Xerox Research really helped me how to fail early, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
you have multiple things to experiment with. So, what to experiment first so that you know what you don't know, right? And it's very, very
Right.
important. I think that really cut short the period of making the first prototype that works, I think.
Mhm.
Second aspect is, because being in corporate for a long time, I had a good network, and a lot of people wanting to help us do this thing, right? So in
Mhm.
one form or the, oh, I know this doctor, I'll connect you with them. So one is that kind of a network also helps. Having said that, I think the first few years it's all about learning the new domain, literally, like domain as
Right.
yeah, breast cancer is something that I only seen it as a user or like a patient in some sense, right?
Yeah.
From a patient's viewpoint or a patient's accompanying viewpoint. So that I had to learn a lot. So I used to go and sit in several conferences, just like I used to sit in many, many computing conferences before. I
Mhm.
turned my focus towards medical conferences, be it here, India, or abroad. Attended many conferences where really top-notch researchers from breast cancer, oncology side as well as radiology side come in, right? So those kind of conferences I attended. Met a lot of doctors, radiologists to understand this problem better. Read up a lot of books and, of course, papers on this to first abreast myself as to what is the current state of art. That's how we have always started research projects, right? First to understand
Right.
what's out there, and then say what's the gap, and then how do you fill it, and what tech and what idea you have. The same way, if you go in a very methodical fashion, I think that is something I did. And of course, I had a
Mhm.
wonderful team, initial team to support as well, to sort of align with the thoughts and sort of brainstorm and so on as well. That was one aspect. Second aspect is that when I was giving a talk, like serendipity, we would say, right? One of the um, I would say board member, or actually chairman of a board of a hospital, was out there in the audience. He came out and said, "I really like what you have looked at it as like a prototype for technology.
Mhm.
How can I help you?" And I said, like, funding somehow I've raised. Of course, that was also an important starting point. But can you help us, test out our solution at your institution? So we put all the we went through the ethics committee. We got a doctor who knows how to read thermal image going. So we handled all the liability aspects and safety aspect for the patient. We made sure that if the report comes in, it has actually gone through a doctor before giving it. So I think getting the first customer within 8 months was like very, very critical for us to really test out. What's the feedback from the end user, even if it is given free, right? And we want to make sure that the reports are good, reports are not harming the patient, right? So all
Right.
of that we were able to take care of. And then I think the one critical aspect was the clinical studies, right?
Right.
Just like in any of the research experiment, we formulate the experiment and then prove that it works, right? And thankfully, medical science has this formal uh, procedures, and protocols for reviewing, submitting, and of course approving a clinical study. So I had to learn about it. Of course, work with an external consultant to learn a little bit more. And then we actually did our first clinical study, which is a multi-site blinded prospective study. I think that was very, very important, where we made every person go through our test. And then the same person went through mammography, ultrasound, and biopsy. And in order to reduce the sample size, we actually looked at high risk patients so we can actually have a statistically significant sample for that cohort. Having said that, that gave us a indication of how good our tool itself is, where we have to sort of refine it. Because as I know you have a lot of data science enthusiasts in the audience, so as
Mm.
researchers and as data scientists, what we do is we have a data set, we set it up to training, validation, and test set, and you can do randomized, cross validation,
Correct.
whatever, all that you can do, right? But still it is in a data set where you know the answers all the time. It's a
Yeah.
completely new ball game when you go to the field, go to a hospital, you actually meet a patient and she doesn't know whether she has cancer or not, and we don't know, or none of the doctors know, and we have to do the testing and tell her. That is a live testing, what we call as prospective testing, which has a completely different implication, right? So we had to sort of fine tune the algorithms again and so on. So it's been a great learning. I think the primary learning has been the clinical studies that we did, and the clinical collaborations that we've had. So the tech and clinical coming together was very, very important. And last but not the least, we are looking at cancer, yes or no. That's our main problem, right? Whether
Right.
there is, breast cancer or not. And in this case, right, the accuracy of the algorithm is extremely important. You cannot have too many false negatives or even a single false negative, because you're leaving a person saying that there's no cancer when she has. And you can't have too many false positives as well, because you're just creating a false alarm in her mind, and possibly a mental trauma for her. So that also was an excellent requirement, or challenging requirement, I would say, from a data science standpoint, to get highest levels of sensitivity and specificity.
And before this, thermal screening was, at least I haven't heard thermal screening
Yeah.
being used for detection of cancer. So how did that idea come? Were there any research papers you could look at and see the results, or this was completely new and then one of the possibly multiple hypotheses you were testing at that time?
No, no, I'm not a medical person. The medical guys or medical science knew that thermal imaging can be used for detecting
Okay.
abnormalities in the breast. But you're right,
Hmm.
there are not many sort of, clinics or anywhere, used. In fact, there was only one clinic when I started in India, Dr. Ramprakash sir, who was trying to use thermal imaging along with ultrasound for guidance. Now, how it happened was that we were brainstorming on what else we can do with for breast screening, given that mammography had low accuracy for both like the 42-year-old and 38-year-old are actually all young women and dense breast tissue. Mammography has low accuracy, which is X-ray based, right? But we wanted to look at another imaging modality. Then one of my imaging expert friends, right, from Palo Alto, Dr. Mesta, he pointed me to thermal imaging. Have you seen this paper? And so that's when I started reading up about all the papers about thermal imaging, which was like 30-year-old, I would say, right?
Hmm.
General published papers where people have actually tried and so on. But I also saw a lot of warning messages from FDA, don't use and so on. But then I was curious, why can't we try? And we had a multispectral camera. We set it to infrared, and we did imaging of two patients first. And there was a remarkable high temperature we could see in a late stage patient she was, but we could find that. Then I said, okay, there is something behind this paper. Then we actually wrote a formal proposal with a hospital funded by our organization to collect the first few research studies samples of positive patients and their images, biopsy data, everything, so that we can analyze. Actually, we went through every case by case to figure out where was the positive, how does this look here. So initially, we looked at it like an imaging localization issue problem. And then I thought, what is the use of looking at people who are already going for, they know that there is cancer. So if you have to use it for screening, then we really have to use it on normal looking patients as well, like normal population as well. So that's when I found a collaborator, as in I found a doctor who was using thermal imaging, Dr. Ram Prakash, whom I referred to earlier. And I took an
Mhm.
appointment, sat with him, learned the science of thermal imaging. But what happens here, a long story short, is that we are measuring the temperature on the skin
Right.
and the tumor can be inside. So, how does the temperature distribution or pattern represent something that is inside? That is one aspect. So, you have to model the patterns, right? Second thing is that there are about 400,000 temperature points. At that time, we were measuring 600,000 temperature points, like pixels, right? Megapixel kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Right.
And yeah, so when we measure that, basically a thermal camera is used where when you take a click, every pixel now is a temperature value instead of like a
Right.
normal RGB video, right? So, and then we have to model this 600,000 temperature points to using our AI algorithms to actually generate. That's the sort of the short aspect of this
Right.
problem statement itself. But the thing is that because it's inside, what type of thermal patterns matter? That is the firstly. Also, you don't have all the data like, oh, here is the 1 million images you can train. No, it's like zero images.
Right.
You have to start from the
Mhm.
initial, and then it's a bootstrapping thing. First, we started with 300 images, patients' images, and so on and so forth. Right. So this multiple aspects it went through in order to reach the place where we did. But basically, it is about database decision making as well as medical science based decision making. So I had to read a lot of medical papers to figure out how do radiologists detect cancer in a mammogram, and similar
Mhm.
features, handcrafted features also be added. So it's a mix of data as well as handcrafted features that we have, and each of them have now become patents right now. So
Yeah.
it's
And
very
it,
innovative.
you know, yeah, and compared to, let's say, some of the trends in data science, where if you're in general collecting a lot more data today, the hardware is improving and the compute is improving. How does that translate to thermal imaging? So have these sensing devices improved a lot in the last 7 years, or has the fidelity increased, or I mean that's a given, and you're building the
No, no,
compute.
definitely thermal imaging cameras have improved a lot. The
Mhm.
papers which were like 1980s, 1976 and all, they're like really late stage. Somebody could make out that there is a big one. But the problem is there's several reasons why something could be positive, right? So figuring out a high temperature, whether it's benign or malignant itself is a machine learning
Mhm.
problem. For that, you require higher resolution cameras. Definitely camera
Right.
technology for thermal imaging has improved a lot over time. Absolutely right. And the reason is many, because thermal cameras have a lot of surveillance and defense applications, right?
Right.
And several other applications from drones and so on and
Used
so forth
heavily in
also.
COVID also.
And COVID is exactly
Yeah,
a recent, uh, because of COVID,
vacation.
there's a lot of vendors who have now started making thermal cameras cheaper and faster, also lower resolution, high resolution, everything. So all of these have demanded, advancement in the technology used for thermal imaging. Um, but now the question is, how do we make sense of the data? How do we make sense of this data with a clinically accurate solution? So that was the problem statement we looked at. And
Correct.
so we kind of model the vascularity, we model the asymmetry, we model the kind of thermal patterns too, and map it to explainable, internal activities, because
Income.
explainable AI is important, and we found it on real ground. Because the doctor will ask,
Yeah,
why are you saying it's positive? Then we have to say,
correct.
so there is like a bunch of vascularity we are seeing here, neovascularization, all of that. It has to be automated.
Great. And from a technical perspective, so were these deep learning based algorithms, or it was a mix of, let's say, clustering and change detection across, let's say, different gradients?
Ah, okay, okay. So initially, as I said, we just had about 300 patients' data. There's no way we could use deep learning.
Deep learning.
We uh, we did a lot of traditional machine learning like SVMs and regression and all the good stuff, right? Random forests and so on. That is how we started. But for that, we had to handcraft a lot of these features
Features.
also.
Right.
For handcrafting, I mean like extracting or making sense of the pattern, like whether it's a
Right.
vascularity. So for that, more recently, of course, we have deep learning based, because now we have 1 million data points. So it's definitely possible to do. So we have many now. It's a combination of traditional features, or feature engineering, and deep learned features and CNNs, UNet. So now we have about 20 different machine learning algorithms, because it's not just a single classifier. We need multiple classifiers and an ensemble, because we need explainability. So we have a
Right.
vascular classifier, we have a hotspot classifier, like that. We also have, apart from the explainability part of it, when you give these tools to for people to use on the ground, you'll find how many mistakes they make. Right? These are
Very
low
true.
skilled
Yeah.
workers, and so they may miss a view and so on and so forth. So we have many AI algorithms to check the correctness of the imaging that is done as well, like
Right.
cooling check, focus check, view check. If something missing, all of that. Those are all deep learning based solutions. We have some segmentation problems, which are UNet, VNet, like kind of annotation problems. So it's a mix of multiple techniques that we use based on the specific problem statement within the whole solution.
Very interesting. And
We hopefully will
today you're
reach generative learning soon. Gen AI will reach soon, mainly because it's generative and it has a bunch of like all this hallucination, and sort of you can have wrong results. Uh, we cannot try that for our final classification, but we are trying it for
correct.
some text related generation that we have in the solution.
Sure. Sure. Interesting. And
So that's good.
see, you're today, present across multiple countries. I know you launched recently in Germany as well. So, how difficult is it to kind of take this healthcare solution to a new geography? Do you need to kind of seek regulatory approvals every time, and then how does that process
Yeah,
work?
absolutely. There are the regulatory requirements are very stringent. Even in India, of course, we have CDSCO, which regulates all the medical devices, right? And software AI based medical device is very new to everyone, right? Even the auditors
Sure.
said this is my first software medical device. We are a medical device, just AI is the medical device, because image is
Correct.
an input. So for us, the infrared imaging camera is an accessory. The actual software itself is the medical device we are talking about. It's very beautiful, actually, to think about it that way, right? So, so that has one is the regulations for that is sort of evolving in different countries. Having said that, for India, yes, we have CDSCO. For every country, there is a regulatory clearance needed. But for Europe, we have a common regulatory framework called CE marking, which applies for all the European countries. So we went for the CE mark first, and hence we got entry into Sweden, Bulgaria, Turkey, and now Germany, and many more countries in the Europe. So that was like one-time regulation and so on. But to get this regulatory clearance for CE, your company has to be systematic, like what you call as quality systems should be correct. Which means
Yes.
that we need to have processes in place, executing the processes and so on, because they want to see its repeatable execution and building of the product. So we need to have an ISO 13485 also. So we need a quality management system, and per device, per product, you need regulatory clearance. And when we go to US we need US FDA, and
Right.
so like that we do have. But once we get a clearance from Europe and US, for other countries it's fairly simpler to get, because you can say this is my certificate. Simpler means it may take just 6 to 8 weeks, and you could put up the same application with more questions answered based in their format. And so like that we are now cleared in Philippines, Kenya, Zambia, Thailand, like that. We've also gone to other countries once we had Europe and US covered, and of course India.
And once you have the clearance, you still need to build the distribution in those countries, or so
Yeah,
that
so
that's
sometimes they even need a clinical, study done in that country. Depends on the doctor,
okay.
and also whatever clinical studies we have done so far, you have to publish it. You have to publish it a peer-reviewed medical journal, which is reviewed by experts to make sure that your testing methodology was correct, the results are right. There may be a lot of questions back and forth from the reviewer also. So once that is published, it is considered authentic data, or trusting. Basically, the trust
Yeah.
increases. Basically, so some doctors, when they see the quality of the data and quality of papers, they may agree to do it. Even like once the regulatory clearance is done, I'm saying. And sometimes the doctors may want to test it out on their own patients before doing. So we've had mix of reaction. So these are called key opinion leaders. So they want to make sure that they will be able to endorse it or start using it only after testing, which is fine. We allow them to do
Yeah.
that as well.
Right.
And then
Uh,
distributors to sell and all those things, as you mentioned. Yeah.
Interesting.
Sorry.
Uh, Talking slightly broadly about the use of AI in healthcare, what are some of the trends which you see as a leader in the domain? What are some of the changes which are happening with AI becoming more mainstream? And then you mentioned generative AI. It is, I think, with generative AI specifically, healthcare is one of the exciting areas, at least for a lot of people speak about it. What is your perspective on use of AI in healthcare?
Yeah, sure. So the way I look at AI in healthcare is kind of three buckets, I would say.
Mhm.
One is the non-clinical aspect of it, which is basically the general customer experience building, reducing the waiting time in for a test, or making sure the hospital beds are well efficiently utilized. That is resource utilization. So all of these are and then matching the doctor to patient. All of these are general AI kind of optimization and AI problems, which definitely are helpful to make the hospital system and healthcare system itself a little bit much more efficient, given the severe shortage of doctors that we have, right,
Correct.
in India and countries like that. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is the clinical decision support systems, right, where the AI models are actually making decisions on behalf of the doctor, or mostly as a tool to the doctor to make better decisions together, right? So this is where I think it's extremely exciting and extremely beneficial, and also very different from any other field where AI is being used,
Yeah.
right? As I mentioned, the one is, of course, the requirement of accuracy, the level of accuracy that is required for this, because a false negative cost, is high, false
Yeah.
positive cost is also high. That is one aspect of it. And second, to top it all, number of people who are well or healthy are much larger than number of people who are ill. Obviously there
Correct.
is huge imbalance in data that you use for
Imbalance in the
training, so that becomes a major issue. And that's why don't talk about of course precision recall, but we talk about sensitivity, specificity in the context of healthcare. And then, of course, collection of data itself is hugely regulated. Data privacy, user not wanting to give, and then you want the ground truth. They have to do biopsy, but they'll run away. They don't. They go to a different hospital to do biopsy, or they will never do it. Go for natural medicine. So a lot of patient drop off is also there. Patient consent. So all of these challenges are there, but still, this is the most exciting and happening place where there is clinical decision support systems which are enabled with AI in healthcare itself. And the third segment is more enablers, right? Like for example, the wearable devices, where the IoT aspect they
yeah.
call IOMT. Internet of medical things, right? So
Medical
though
things.
that
Yeah.
is the other field which is growing, which is a hardware software combination. How long, optimization of the sensor data itself, and doing some kind of an edge based AI versus cloud based AI aspect. So a lot of research is happening in the wearable technology as well, right? So I think I would generally bracket into three. The first one being the regular use case, where it is, of course, now more and more hospitals are being comfortable using it. But the second and third, which I mentioned, are upcoming, and there are very few instances of real things like Niramai Analytix, which is being used on the ground. But that is another growing segment. Both of these are growing segments, I would say. But in general, I feel that especially CDSS, the clinical decision support system, can really bridge the healthcare divide that exists in countries like ours. We talk about IT divide and all that, but I call it a healthcare divide, right? Where the rural ecosystem is completely very, very poor with respect to the infrastructure available for healthcare, and the urban system has a lot of doctors and so on, but they're hugely loaded. So, how can we use AI as additional tools for ASHA workers and simple health workers in the rural areas, so that we can identify the right patient that needs attention at the right time and bring them to a hospital for further diagnosis. On the urban side, however, how can we use the tools as aid to the doctor to make the doctor more productive, more scalable, right? And have time to have some tea, coffee at least, right? You see so much overworked doctors on the other side. So this is how I feel that AI can really bridge the healthcare divide. And I'm super excited about this space. Talking about generative AI itself, as I briefly referred to before, it is a new area, but healthcare is where the accuracy is extremely important, especially the CDSS part of it, where it will take some time to actually have a generative AI based technique. But generative AI is used for data synthesis. You want to expand on the data set that you have, right, with synthetic data. So there, AI, generative AI, can definitely be used. We are using it. Of course, the first segment which I talked about for improving efficiency and like for communication with the patient, is also chatbots and all this directly, patient information access, right? Access to patient information. So all of that is definitely where Gen AI can be used. Another field where I feel generative AI can be very, very helpful to healthcare is in education, medical education, where you want to actually generate special cases. Like my daughter just finished her medical, and then one of the things is that they'll be looking for special patients. Maybe you want to find a patient who has breast cancer and maybe a chest issue, right? Both together. How do they look? How do the images look? These could be generative in nature, right? And because you may not find a patient in every hospital trained. So I think I feel like a huge space for generative AI in clinical decision support is for medical education.
Interesting. And if, let's say, someone with, let's say, a decade of research experience now comes up to you and asks, what are some of the problems which you would love to see getting solved? So, if they want to probably start a journey similar to yours, what would be those top two, three problems which you think can be
In healthcare only,
you know,
right?
in healthcare, which could be solved using AI, or there could be these novel approaches to solve those problems.
Right. There are tons of problems, I would say, because when we developed a model for breast cancer detection, early breast cancer detection, we find that we need another model for, let's say, symptomatic case, that is diagnostic use case. We need a different model. We need a different model for monitoring. So every small condition needs an AI model. So, what I would suggest to them is to go. One is, if they have seen that problem affecting somebody close to them, it is much easier to stick to it. Because perseverance is important. Everything is not smooth. There are a lot of ups and downs, so you have to stay calm and then keep going with it. So for that, I think it's important. I say this all the time. Important to connect with your heart to the problem, right?
Mhm.
So I would ask, like, is there a problem that you've seen around you? Because there's tons of problems, where you are able
Yeah.
to relate to, right? It could be cardiac, it could be, kidney, it could be any, or of course, breast or any other cancer, right? So that connection is important, I think. And then
Mhm.
sitting with a doctor to understand the space, going sitting with them and saying, what exactly is the problem that you're facing? And many times, trust me, the doctors will come up with like simple solutions, like which is software can solve, like simple Excel
Mhm.
type requirements also they may have.
Uh,
So in
mhm.
that conversation, you have to be like having that conversation in a way that you see the novelty coming in, and it's a give and take, right? There may be some simple
Yeah.
quick solutions, you'll give it to them so that they come up with some additional. Not everything they will be able to tell you exactly what problem and so on and so forth, but in general, early detection of several of these conditions, different type of cancers, different type of abnormalities, pain management, skeletal-muscular issues. Everybody has some hand pain or leg pain. All of these, have a huge potential for medical imaging and AI, because the best way to diagnose is to poke into the body and pull out the tissue. You need to know where to poke, right? And that's where the
Right.
medical imaging really helps. And so AI on medical imaging is a huge area. You can also fine tune on the domain based on where your heart connects, and having a dialogue with the doctor. That's how I would say.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. Uh, Talking specifically about your leadership journey. So when you, let's say, moved from research labs to leading Niramai, uh, how has it been for you as a leader? And any specific, let's say, you referred to ups and downs. So any specific instances which changed you and had a huge impact on you as a leader?
I think leading within a corporate environment, from a product building perspective, bringing out the business value perspective, it is very similar to how we do in a startup environment. What changes drastically is that you don't have the financial cushion anymore. Like, you need to also
Correct.
run it as a business, right? So while you want to solve the problem and I want to sort of give everything free, it doesn't work that way, because I need to pay salaries of my team members, right? So that is how, where you will become a little bit more conscious about what problem being solved is important to life, which definitely we want. And then with that, how do we ensure that the customers that we want them to use, the customers are able to make some money, so that they are able to part it. So I think the money aspect of it is new. That is the investment, be it raising funds from other investors, or have your own friends and family. It depends on how what your specific context is. So that is one. And then when you run a business, you have a lot of these legal implications, compliance requirements, and so on. Usually you kind of uh, get an external help to start with, and then later when your company becomes big, you can get a local person. That's how I did, as an internal person. But even when you are offloading it, right, to an external, you need to be at least smart enough to ask the right questions. So you have to go to get know. It's like jack of all type, right? You need to understand
Mhm.
all aspects of business to some reasonable extent. And of course, you can speak to people, experts, and if you know tech, and if you're able to solve, and you're smart enough to understand that, there's honestly that's the toughest part, which that this is easy to understand. So that's how I am sort of I had to learn about all the streams. And yeah, there's lots of ups and downs. Many times you trust, you build a team, and you trust that, like, you can give different departments to different people and they'll run. But running within a startup is extremely tiring and challenging. It's like mountaineering, I say, right? There's a lot of, it's not easy going, right? You have to enjoy
Mm.
the mountaineering, really, to do it, right? If you
Correct.
enjoy just sitting and going to a park to do the walk, that's not the way. Like, so, and especially your the first line leadership team needs to be excited about this kind of mountaineering or challenges, or solving the challenge itself is a motivation enough, right? Not necessarily the salary, right? Of course salary is important, but I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
So that type of mindset people you need. But because as a founder, you want to sort of run as far as possible. You may not find everyone to sticking on. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have had really people whom I depend on just sort of quit and go when it becomes really hard, like COVID struck and one person left and things like that, right? And there are lots of other companies around, who can attract talent, especially when they're been through a startup. They get to learn
Correct.
a lot more holistically, and they become more valuable to a corporate. So this, I think, people issues has been one of my major ones, I would say. But whoever is sticking on for the vision and so on, so that helps, because yeah, then a lot of disruption happens. COVID has been a major hurdle for us, where our business went almost zero, like in terms of number of screenings, and then we had to pick up again and figure out what we do during that time. So we actually developed an AI-based fever test for COVID screening also at that time, and sort of made sure like everyone is busy and also some money comes in so we can continue. So some of these things on the foot, but it's fun. Like, like I said, no, I enjoy solving challenges, solving tough problems, and it's like everyday affair in some sense. And different at different stages of the company, you get different types of challenges, but it's really worth it because you have all the freedom to solve that problem, and you have all the focus that you want to do, and you can actually, like, laser focus. You can go much more than what you can do, like a much larger company. That's something I have definitely find I have found it. Yeah.
Interesting. And you've represented India and startups at multiple stages. You
Yes.
did a keynote at the UN. You had opportunity to meet the president. Among all of these, which has been most closest to your heart, so to say, or any particular experience which you would want to share with the community.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, I met President Ma'am also. I met Sundar Pichai. I met Bill Gates. It's been an excellent exposure, given that we are solving a very important problem in a novel way, and very few AI-based healthcare solutions out there. But definitely my own precious moments are definitely the two things I would say. The United Nations address was something that's very rarely given to any Indian,
Yeah.
not necessarily startup. And so I was invited to present in the SDG conference, the Sustainable Development Goals conference, which was itself a good one, as an invited talk. And after me, a Nobel Prize winner spoke. It was like mind-boggling and
Mhm.
excellent audience. So after that, they just said, like, tomorrow morning we have the General Assembly in the UN, and you have to come and give a, like, a 5-minute speech. I said, who all will be there? And I went to the hall, and I have seen it. Like, all of us would have seen a lot of chairs and all that, right?
Yeah.
97 countries being represented by heads of their countries, like, either a finance minister or the prime minister of that country. So it was like really, I said,
Yeah.
what am I going to talk to them, right? I can't talk AI or all those things. They said, no, you just tell them what they have to focus on and so on. So that was, I said, okay. So you just tell what's in your heart. And I said, okay, fine. And just I had to write it up because was getting translated to 52 languages. So it was very
Wow.
great experience, I would say, sitting here and really seeing everyone. It was like 5 to 7 minutes, but it was a super good experience, being on stage next to the president of UN and so on. The second experience is, when a camp was going on, and the head of Cancer Society, Karnataka Cancer Society, it was done under the umbrella of Cancer Society, and he just called me up. I like, why is the president calling me, right? Is something gone wrong in the camp? And this is almost like 3 4 years ago. And he just said, Geetha, what have you done? Sir, what happened? I was like super panicky. And he said, I have been in this cancer screening area. He's like senior person who's volunteering for doing screening camps anywhere, 50 years now. But every time I use the word cancer, people run away. And I'm here sitting in front of your camp where there's a line of people saying, I want to do next, I want to do next.
Wow.
You've changed the experience of cancer screening to the extent that people are asking them not to close. They want unless they
Wow.
finish their screening, right? I mean, even now when I relate to it, I get goosebumps. This is something I'll never forget, because our test is, because we use infrared imaging. It is non-touch, no see, no touch. It's completely
Yeah.
private. The lady enters into a booth. She's alone. She removes her clothes because otherwise we can't do the screening. But the device is kept 3 feet from the person, and it's a very radiation free test. The technician is outside and giving instructions. So and it's just like very simple testing, and immediately we give results, and especially in rural camps and so on. So people really love it, and that is something that keeps me going. It's an experience I'll never forget. I know it keeps happening now, people tell me, but that was the first time, like, uh, from the Cancer Society president. It's nothing beats that. Yeah. Thank you for
Thanks for
asking.
sharing that. Even I'm no, I'm getting goosebumps as you're explaining that. So thanks for
Thank you.
sharing that. And today, what does your day to day look like? How does your what's your style of leadership and then working with
Sure,
team?
sure. So my style from the beginning has been more consensus based. I get, like, if I have an idea of like what is the strategy we have to implement, I bring in uh, all the stakeholders. We say, in the company, it could be a simple new feature in the product. Then I get all the product team members who are associated with it, and but if it is like a business idea, because we're doing something new, right? Nobody else in
Yeah.
the world has done before. So even our marketing, sales, pricing, how to do the pricing, of course, tech, everything, testing, clinic, regulatory, everything is novel, right? We need to think and
Yeah.
ideate on that, right? Of course, we learn from others, but we have to ideate how it relates to us. And so when we have this, I usually go to the board. It's like the university style brainstorming, like do the, like, write on the board and then tell me why you
Mhm.
think it will work, why it will not work. But and then we try to figure out the what are the aspects of risks, and how do we sort of take care of it, what are the different options. So it's really a brainstorming I start with for everything. And then we collectively usually consist, but sometimes of course you have to put your foot down and say this seems okay. Uh, but if you argue out or list out the benefits of one versus another, you usually have a consensus, and then the individual department heads can go back and implement it in their own teams, right? So this is usually how I do. Sometimes all decisions may not work. Sometimes it does fail, right? And so then it is important for the leader to own up the failure. Oh, in the brainstorming you said, and that's why it happened. No, right? It's important for us to own up, because final decision you have made, right? So I think own up the bad decisions or failed decisions. Try to make it work, of course, but and give good due credit to people if it works. Typically that's how it is. Doesn't work, it's me. If it works, it's you. That's how it should be.
Yeah. And during this journey, you have been a CEO and a CTO simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
So how is this translated for your own time and managing all of that
Yeah.
and
No,
life?
initially, because it was a new product, we were building, and we had very uh, good requirements, very tough requirements also. There are two aspects that come in from a CTO's role. One is to give a high level guidance to what's happening, high level guide direction to the sort of the, while there will be a product head, right? Direction to what makes
Mhm.
sense to the business. So CTO's role is a little bit semi business and tech, basically. So
Yeah.
CTO needs to be able to understand the business requirements and translate it to a tech part. Because
Yeah.
I came from the tech world itself and I'm running the business, it's actually easy for me to sort of relate to it. I do have a head of product, I have a head of data science and head of engineering who actually do all the good job. But
Mhm.
many times there is a need for guidance. That's what I'm seeing. But yeah, once we find a person who can. And also the second aspect is, because it's a tech solution, even when I'm pitching to the investors or doctors, there's a lot of clinical and technical details that I need to know, right?
Yeah.
And I anyway need to know. So it's coming in like hand in hand for this particular project. In CEO's role, it's more revenue driven, customer focused activity. So we have to balance both and run the show, I would say.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that. Dr. Geetha, usually towards the end of these episodes, we ask a few rapid fire questions with our
Sure.
guests, and the idea is to just know you better. So, any particular book which had a huge impact on you, or which you would want to recommend to the audience of the show?
Of course, I've read a bunch of books. I think I still remember my high school day book, right? How to make
Mhm.
friends. I used to, because
Oh, wow.
I was such a cocoon, not talking to
Mhm.
anybody, and so I remember doing that. But now, when I'm an entrepreneur here, the reaching out and being that, go and talk to people, that's the most important aspect of it, right? So that's something that comes back. Not that I remember all the six things that were said, but Honestly, I think that's one thing that is really stuck in my mind. But there are several, right? How to prioritize urgent versus important. So there are several books from Cohen, which really helps me.
Sure. And after your typical workday, what is your way to unwind? How do you kind of manage your day demands versus just keeping?
So yeah, this is a good one. So I always continue to work, right, all the time on the laptop or mobile to do this one, because um I mean, once you start loving what you're doing, right, that's your life. Having said that, once in a while I do kind of stretch, relax in front of TV, watching a sport, or sometimes when I'm too stressed, I watch very, very simple movie. It just helps
Mhm.
me de-stress. Probably I'm not in the movie, I'm thinking something, but at least I get to some comedy.
Thanks for sharing this. And then it's so inspiring to just listen to you and to
Yeah,
your
and but I
journey.
do a
And
lot of pranayam and yoga to just
okay,
yeah, every day I have to do the pranayam. I follow art of living technique for pranayam called
interesting.
Sudarshan Kriya. That gives me a lot of present moment aspect. Otherwise you will be saying, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that." We should scrap that and come to current present. So all these things the pranayam gives me.
Sure. Okay. Thanks a lot, ma'am, for taking time out and sharing your journey and your perspective with the community. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Kunal. It was a great discussion. Thank you. Take care. Bye.